untaper this side. Because it's generally, the only time I'm tapering is when most of my object is tapered, right? It's the only time we're going to use it. Okay. Other than that, we'll taper them after the fact. Now, the thing you got to remember, if I'm going to untaper this front surface, which is here, that's why I turned to there, is it's going to work perpendicular to the surface. So if I taper this face, and I choose this line as my taper line, is this going to untaper the first face?
No.
No. Why not, Majid?
Because it will go with the angle.
Because it's going to go on this angle. This is a foreshortened line in this view. So you got to be careful on what you do with taper faces to get it to work how you want it to work. Be careful, because when you got this, you got a lot of foreshortened lines on here from UCSs. Okay? So how do you go, and let's kind of do it wrong first, so that you see what happens. So I'm going to come out and just get to where I can see that front surface a little bit. I'm in the right view, but it doesn't really matter, because we're going to use snaps, and snaps will override my UCS. Okay, so up under extrude faces, this is all the solid edit that's in chapter 12. Do you see the taper face option? Okay, choose that. Now, you don't have to hold the control key down. You're not doing sub-object selection. It knows you're going out and clicking on a face. So get your cursor into one of these faces and just left click it, and it will select that face. Once you've selected the face, hit enter. Now it's going to ask you for a couple points to where you define this angle. And it's going to need the base. So here, I'm going to use existing part of the object. Okay, so I'm going to click here and here. So I used something on the object, and I used one of these foreshortened lines. Okay. Now that defined the angle. Now I'm going to type in the taper angle. Remember, a negative number will take it out, positive number brings it in. I tapered this object at 15 degrees in, so now I'm going to go a minus 15 out. So I'm going to hit minus 15. Did you get some weird result? Mine took off. It just went flying out there. Point being, it never worked right. This is not flat. Okay, because it went on the angle you just defined. Did you get a weird result, something you weren't expecting? Okay. Now, I'm just going to hit U for undoing that. It obviously never worked. Let's do it correctly. You may want to draw on the line and get yourself some snap points. With this one, I have some available to me, because I can use my midpoint snap on any of these surfaces to define a line perpendicular to the surface in the base, in the top. Okay. So in essence, I'm going to use the midpoint of this one as my taper angle instead of this one that's cocked sideways. You may have to, like I said, come back on here and draw yourself some snap points. So let's go back to taper faces, select the face. Now, for my taper angle, I want to be perpendicular on that face. So I'm going to shift right click and go to my midpoint, get that one. And I'll do midpoint again, right above it, right there. Now I have defined a line that's on the face and is perpendicular to the base. Okay? Where that is 90 degrees and it's sitting right on the base. Now I can type in my angle. So my taper angle is minus 15, and I straighten that edge out. I didn't get this weird result where it shot it way off in some unknown direction. Did you get a better result? Did it straighten off that side? No? What happened, Declan? Did it work?
Well, I didn't know what angle I did in the first place, so.
Okay. Yeah, well. Do you understand what I was trying to say?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
You need points on the face, and it depends on how you want it to work. You may have to get some lines. Keep in mind, you are defining the axis it works on. Yes, Sean?
So with how, he couldn't remember what his angle was, could he draw a line, or could he draw a straight line coming out and measure that angle and would it work then?
Yeah, switch to another UCS and get perpendicular to draw a straight up line, and then you can just measure it.
Okay.
Now, do you have to use taper face to do something like that? If you don't remember it, another thing you could do, okay, we've got grips where we did this yesterday, right? Grabbing an edge and pulling it. Okay, but then you're dealing with a distance, so you're probably running a little trig because it's a right triangle at that point, and you need to know the distance you're going to move the grip or whatever the case might be. So depending on the information, there's a lot of ways to take care of this. Taper faces works very well as long as you can define those axis points. Yes?
So you don't actually have to go on the line, like I followed your example yesterday, you actually made a line, this is a line. This one you didn't, you just.
Yeah, I
points.
didn't, but I could.
You don't have to though,
Right, I don't have
obviously,
to.
I mean, so we didn't have to do that yesterday, you did it.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I can come in, remember, we've got dynamic UCS. If I turn that on, and I go to draw on a plane, so I do the line command. See how I come in and it's now selecting that back plane has been highlighted? If I come to here, I'm on the left-hand plane. I'm drawing on those planes if I got my dynamic UCS on. So I might come in and say, you know what, I'm going to taper this front one. Okay, so again, you can use your snaps if you want to. A lot of times, keep in mind, you run conceptual or realistic views. Many times it's easier to draw in wireframe so you can see if I'm snapping here or here, and a lot of these points are right next to each other, and you don't even really know what you're getting. So the one I did yesterday was from there, and then we could go to midpoint on this one. And there's my axis. Now I could use taper angle, and I got snap points. And I don't have to guess. All right, so that's taper face.
When you threw a line, that's what I needed, points, okay?
Yep. All right,
Through that.
let's do copy faces, page 316. This one's real useful if you need to edit something and get a different shape. So what I would say is, let's say I've got my top surface here that I'm normal to. What I want to do is I want to extrude off of this, but I want a shape that's half as big as this. What I would then do is copy a face, because it gives me all my line work. I don't have to redraw anything. So let me show you how this works. Okay, so I'm going to turn my object up so I can see it. I'm going to choose copy face. Now I'm going to come in and let me do conceptual so we can see this. And again, it's looking for a face whenever you choose this. So I'm going to come in here and click left click on it, and it's selected that face. Now at this point, it's going to ask me for a base point and a thing. I can move this face or whatever. Most of the time I want it right here on the object. And so I'm just going to select a point for my base point and the exact same point as my other point. Now I'm going to just switch. Okay. So here I switched my solid to a different layer so you can see the difference. So I have a solid, but now I have a face that's right here next to it, but it's not part of the solid. It went and took that surface and made a region for me because I copied it right on top of itself. Now at this point, I can go ahead and scale this guy and change its shape or something, and it's all in the right spot. So here, I'm just gonna run a quick scale on that. Okay, so I'm gonna come in, get the face. And let's see, for my base point, I'll just use this point right here, and let's do a 0.5. Now, I gotta move my thing so you can see it. There's that surface that I just made a copy of and scaled.
I'm making copies and they're going next to it. How did you get it to go right on top?
You got a base point thing,
No,
right?
yeah, I'm picking,
Then pick the same point for your base point, same point for your destination
oh,
point.
okay.
Now, I can now extrude this like such and pick up where I left off. And I've got another solid. So pretty useful. The reason I sometimes use copy face versus our interactive, remember where we used grips and we can just pull it, or we can actually, if you did the ductwork one, you can use revolve and the gizmos with it and all that jazz to create surfaces right off another one. Well, many times we need to do a little edit work, but we want stuff on that plane. And this is a great way to get it. Okay, just copy a face, leave it in place, and then edit it and start extruding onto it. You see my base all lines up there, right? I moved it just to show you that it's still there. Another way to get some baseline work. So you use copy face to get a surface line work that you can then edit and pick up and go. What if you want to deal with more than one surface? Extract all the edges. Okay, that's the way you do it, and then you deal with your line work. Okay, so I really want two-dimensional line work that I can edit. So on this one, again, I've deleted everything. I just got my original solid, which is this kind of truncated pyramid. They should call that a prism. And right above where we are dealing with copy face and all that, you have extract edges. This is on page 318. Okay, so I'm going to do extract edges. I'm going to select my solid. It has now extracted all the edges and left them in place. Now you don't see it because it's in the solid also. I'm going to move this solid. See all the line work that's now left in its place? I now can go ahead and make P lines, I can extrude, I can edit, I can do whatever I need to with this to pick up where I want it to go. But it has extracted all of the edges and vertices of your solid regardless of its shape. Okay, so in essence, what did I just extract? A wireframe model, right? Our first solid that we talked about has no area, no volume, no mass. It only defines vertices. Okay, that's what you did. What happens when you extract a cylinder? Let me just real quickly, I'm going to go back to my front view. I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to extrude it. And let's go -5. Okay, so now I have a cylinder. Extract the edge of that. Because where are your edges? Do you have an edge on this surface? The rounded part?
No.
No, it looks like you do. You've got a limiting element, but it's not a surface. I mean, it's not an edge, right? I think what you're going to find is you're only going to get the front and back. Okay. So go ahead and throw a quick cylinder on there, extract the edges of it, move your model, and see what you're left with. think you'll find you got that. 2 cylinders. Real quick way though, can I take this? You know, a lot of times we have shafts that go a certain size because it's got to meet up with some ball bearing or whatever, and then the shaft keeps going, but it drops a smaller size and goes. I'd extract the surface or this, take that, scale it down, extrude it out, here I go. And I'm running. So everything we've kind of talked about, don't redraw stuff if you've already got a surface and something that defines it out there. Extract it off of your existing solid. Now there's quite a few more options in there. I don't know that I would spend a huge amount of time going over every option so that I know exactly it. What I would do is get familiar with what's in here, maybe run 1 or 2 examples, read the text, and then later, when you get into this, don't hesitate to say, you know what, I think there was something on that. Go back and look at your stuff and make it work. If you would we're going to run the shell command, and we only got 2 more. Let's do the shell command and we'll take a break. This is on page 320. I'm going to do it on the cylinder because this is probably the most obvious part. I've already got a cylinder on my screen. Put a cylinder on your screen real quick. This is a great way to make pipes, sheet metal, containers. I gave you a test on auxiliary views where you did a hopper. I would use the shell command to create the hopper with taper faces. Real quick command and it works awesome. So whenever you got a metal object that you're putting together where you're doing like plate steel, plastic, whatever, this would be a great option to use. If I'm doing a roof of a house, I'd probably use this. So how do you use the shell? So go into your shell command, and where is it? It's under the separate option right below your solid edit. There's a shell option right here. Click on that. First thing it's going to ask is, do you got a solid I can have? So go select your cylinder. Now the next thing it's going to ask you, do you want to remove faces? You may want to. Now, if you're doing, keep in mind, you don't have to remove faces. We're going to remove faces on this because we're going to make a pipe, is what we're going to make. But if I was doing, I don't know, a soccer ball, I would make a sphere, use the shell command, but I wouldn't remove any faces. And what it's going to do, it's going to make a thin thing on the outside, kind of like the crust of the earth, right, without the mantle. You can do a lot of different things with this. And it's a lot of it you don't ever see. Okay, so now, on this one, since we're making a pipe, I'm going to remove this face. So I'm going to get on the front and click on that face. And I'm going to spin it to the back, because most pipes are open all the way through. And I'm going to choose the back surface also. Now I'm done removing faces at that point. So I'll wait just a second while you get those 2 faces selected.
So when you got to that command, you just started thinking about faces.
The first option on the command line is select the solid, and then it defaults to a remove faces thing. Don't choose the circular part. Okay, so we're done selecting faces. Go ahead and hit enter. Now it's going to say, what is the distance? Now, as an example on a pipe, if I was doing a 2-inch pipe and I know it's schedule 80, I would know that's got a wall thickness of like 0.32 or whatever it was. And I could go to the internet and find all that information out or a handbook. Let's just type in a distance of, I don't know, 0.25. And you'll get varying results depending on how big your cylinder was to start. Now I'm going to spin this up. Notice now, it has set that wall thickness, it's removed the two ends so that I can see through it. This is now a pipe, or it could be. You don't need to follow me on this, I would just kind of like you to watch real quick. I've also got another solid out here, and let me shell that. Okay, let's say I want this to be a piece of ductwork. So I'm going to come in and shell on this. So I'm going to shell this object. I'm going to remove this face. And then I'm going to give it, let me just go right back into that. So I'm going to shell that guy. Didn't I click shell? Shell. I'm going to remove this face right here on top. And then I'm going to set this at about 0.025. Now let me tilt that up. See, now I got a box. All the way through with an open top. There's a container of some type. If I wanted it to be hollow through, I'm going to move air or fluids through it, I would have taken the back face off also. A lot of possibilities with the shell command. Can you do things like this without shell? Yes, you can create another solid, extrude those distances and subtract. Okay, but you don't have to calculate any of that because this distance is uniform all the way through. It gives it to you. All right, with that said, let's take a break. And I think what we're going to do now is jump straight to 14 and run the view base command for a moment. Okay. We got one other command in here too, but let's take a break. Try and be back by 1/4 after.